So I had read the leaks for this chapter that came out 2 days ago, and I didn't want to cover it instantly, mainly not to spoil anyone, but as well as also to give myself some time to really sit and think about this and have better thoughts than just my on-the-moment reactions that usually these chapter views tend to be. So Berserk chapter 371, properly titled A Fading Torch in a Pitch Black Night, it opens up with Roderick continuously trying to, get Guts out of the room, which he's locked himself in, and Shirke at that moment sends forth a projection of herself into the room to take a look at Guts. And the next few pages, at first when reading through it, my instant reaction was, okay, we're really taking our time with this. But the more that I gave myself time to think about it, the less I thought about just the now. The chapter-to-chapter reading experience, and if not, what it's trying to do overall, which I always think is a very important thing to keep in mind. But even in the now perspective, I thought the story was really doing an excellent job of just going to lengths at showing us just how broken and defeated Guts is. Because despite the last chapter being heartbreaking enough, when you have a character who's as known for being the representation really of just sheer human will, sometimes manifested through rage, really justifying how broken a character is by showing the audience is very needed. There have been moments where we've seen Guts cry, but to see him this distraught, this broken, it was something else. Shirke seeing the memories of Guts and his sword, and we get this really, I think, powerful page with all of these different sort of brutal moments that have happened throughout the series, in particular the one with all of the alligators and the trolls, as well as the horse appearing, and at the very top you get to see Rosine. Just sort of all of the different adversities that Guts has been able to deal with and break through by his sheer willpower, by his sword. And after losing Casca, he now loses the very thing that he's relied on, which was expressed in the previous chapter. And then the next page, it transitions to Griffith. And what I find to be very interesting is then we get to see these teeth-like things bite down on Griffith, and then blood seep from the teeth. And in the meanwhile, Shirke just cries out, "It can't be Guts's," and then screams his name, as then Guts yells out, "Everything, it was all for nothing." And I think the page in which we see Guts sort of sink down, drowning in this abyss-like water, serves really well with the page that comes after, sort of 2 pages ahead, where it says, "Sooner or later, it all sinks down to be torn apart. Everything submerging to the dark, cold seafloor, including my voice." And I thought that was a really beautiful line there, not only depicting of what's physically happening to Elfheim, but again, being a reflection of what's happening to Guts. The torch that is slowly fading away in the dark abyss, in the dark night, being dragged down to the seafloor. I thought all of that was very beautiful. And I think the image that really drove home just how defeated Guts was this one. Now, admittedly, this could all be a coincidence, but if there was any way to show a character is broken, vulnerable, defeated, is to put him in the fetal Yamcha position, because this is exactly what popped into my mind. Listen, I had to joke about something. This is because this is brutal. Now, I talked about this in the last chapter, but in this chapter, it's even more relevancy. And that is really giving a justification to whatever means Guts is going to have to resort to next. He lost Casca, and his sword, which he has always been dependent upon, which they really are just nailing this home with that message, has failed him. It's completely failed him, and one could argue it's almost of no use to him. So he's going to have to resort to the Beast of Darkness, or even the Beylit, which is something that I've seen a lot of people talking about, as it reminded me to a specific chapter back when he met Shirke's master, and she talked about, the Beylit will be in the right hand of the right person at the right time. And we know the Beylit is something that really activates upon despair, and I think nailing home this concept of despair in Guts, this pure emotion of just utter defeatedness, is going to be very important to really give a legitimate justification to whatever happens next. I say that because if it was just the last chapter where that ended and then we didn't get to see the further lengths to how Guts feels defeated, then one could argue it sort of falls flat. So I don't think it will even end in this chapter. I think for the next few chapters, as this arc closes and the next one begins its build-up, exposition stage of the arc, we're going to continue to see Guts like this. And we as the reader have always followed Guts through his many different lows, but really experiencing what I think might be a drawn-out low for his character will only add more satisfaction when we see him rise up again, this time coming back from arguably his biggest low yet, which says a lot, but I mean, really, when you have a character like Guts saying that it feels like everything was for nothing, I mean, does it really get lower than that for him? We then go to Falconia, where Sonya is awaiting for Griffith's return, as then Locus and Grumbelt show up as well, and at that moment, we then see Griffith flying in on top of Zod, landing and having Casca in his arms, which is continuously a painful reminder, but so be it. Now, for the next few chapters, I'm really up in the air regarding what direction I think it's going to take and how it's going to go about presenting this. Whether we're going to get sort of these half-and-half chapters where we see Guts' perspective and then switching to Griffith's perspective, or if we're going to see sort of the endeavors of Griffith and Falconia and Casca waking up, or if there'll only be sections in the chapters devoted to that, or, it'll go back and forth between the two chapter to chapter. But I am pretty certain that it's going to be a little bit in which we see Guts defeated like this, broken, and sort of going through his mind and all of the different methods he might have regarding, what to do next. Now, despite him saying it was all for nothing, I sort of alluded to this in the last chapter review that now Guts still has people around him. It's not like when in the Black Swordsman arc, when he left Casca behind and went out to be the Black Swordsman, he didn't really have anyone left. Although that would be negating Goto and Judo and all that, but you get the point. It's a very different relationship than the one he has with Farnese and Shirke and these people he's been traveling with during this entire section of the story, and really seeing what lengths they might have to go to in order to pull Guts out of this pitch black darkness. It's painful, admittedly, very painful reading this chapter, but not in a bad way. I think showing this side to a character that has already been, I think, such a well-written and complex one where we've seen so many different emotions, this time really delving into this side of him is I think in the long run going to be something we look back on as reason for why Guts is such a well-written and thought-out character. Man, it's we've never really seen him at this sort of stage, and it's my bad if it's sort of all that I'm focusing on, but it is sort of the takeaway from the chapter, right? And so there's really two options: whether or not the fire that's within Guts will be rekindled once again, or if he will just simply fade and give into the darkness. A fading torch in a pitch black night.